Hello, Namaskar. Welcome to my pod, the CAA Show. CAA, as all of you know, is Conversations and Analysis, and my name is Juggi Bhasin. Ever since Sheikh Hasina was deposed in a military coup in Bangladesh, all kinds of anti democratic forces, all kinds of unelected forces have been emerging out of the Bangladesh bottle. It is almost like a genie is coming out of that bottle. These anti democratic forces, which had been put a lid upon by Sheikh Hasina when she was in power, they're all coming out. And all of them have different demands, but they're all united in one singular demand. They all want Sheikh Hasina to be extradited from India to Bangladesh. And this is where India has to stand firm. We have to refuse all these so called requests. We have to stand by Sheikh Hasina, and not simply because Sheikh Hasina was a friend of India, but because of very, very essential, very, very important geostrategic reasons. I'm going to expand on these reasons, of course, in this podcast, but know that this this threat, I would say, not this is not even a demand or a request. This is actually a threat now, which is being coming across from Bangladesh towards India. This is actually a test of India's leadership. It is a test of India's leadership not only in the world but in the global south. It is a test of whether India can stand firm or India buckles under and gives in to these demands just to curry favor or to have better relations with the new powers to be in Bangladesh, in Dhaka. This is what India has to resist. And also know this that even though the world right now is championing Muhammad Yunus, who is the head of the interim government in Bangladesh, the fact is that not only Muhammad Yunus, but all these other characters, including the Jamaat, including these Al Qaeda affiliates, all these people who are making a demand for the extradition of Sheikh Hasina, they are all people who are unelected. And even though Sheikh Hasina might have won with what I call a half a democratic mandate because a large portion of the opposition had boycotted the elections, but the fact of the matter still is that her party, the Awami League, had actually won on millions and millions of votes. It was a democratic election to that extent, and therefore also from a democratic point of view, for reasons of democracy, we have to support Sheikh Hasina. But before now, as I expand on this entire, the reasons why we should be supporting her, as usual, of course, I would urge all of you to subscribe to the CAA show. It's very, very simple. You just have to press that red button on your screen. Subscription is, of course, completely free. We would also appreciate if you could like the show and share the video with your friends, colleagues, and peers. Now, what really is, first of all, let's take a look at what is going on in Bangladesh and why these people, all these people, are making a demand. Let me start with the most immediate provocation which is coming across from Bangladesh to India. There is this person who is, of course, affiliated with the Al Qaeda. His name is Jashimuddin Rahmani, and he is the chief of the Ansarullah Bangla team, that is the ABT, which is again a radical terrorist outfit. And look at the demands he's making. This, of course, the first demand he has made is for the extradition of Sheikh Hasina so that she stands trial in Bangladesh. But then he's also asking for help from Pakistan for the independence, hold your breath, of Jammu and Kashmir. And he's also asked, the nerve of this man, to ask that Mamata Banerjee, the chief minister of Bengal, should declare independence from the Modi rule. This is to the extent that these people have gone. And take a wild guess that how is this person now being allowed to speak? How is this person roaming around freely? Because this person has been released by that so-called Nobel laureate, the so-called champion of free speech, democratic rights, etc., Muhammad Yunus, the interim head of the Bangladesh government. And therefore, if this were not to tell us what really is going on inside Bangladesh right now, this should be an eye-opener to us. But the fact of the matter really is that all kinds of extreme elements now are on the loose. They are on the prowl in Bangladesh. They all have highly radicalized agendas. The army is, of course, standing by. The army is not at the moment certainly interfering, though again, the army can become a critical factor or can interfere anytime they can step in. But you have the Al Qaeda affiliated terrorists who have been released by Muhammad Yunus. You have the Jamaat, which by itself is an extremist organization, a religious fundamentalist Islamist organization. You have the BNP. All these people, they are now basically, they're all united in this one singular demand that give Sheikh Hasina to us. It's almost like, in very crude medieval terms, you're demanding the head of this one person for Bangladesh to even think of having normal relationship with India. That is really the trade-off, which actually has been couched in this demand of extradition made by Bangladesh to India. And therefore, really, we have to understand the game which is going on out there. And the game which is going on is very, very simple. The fact of the matter is that not even within a couple of months of taking over or having come from Paris, I think, Muhammad Yunus, and he came and he took over the government. And within this short period of time, the fact is he has been unable to control anything. He has actually lost control completely. The country is completely imploding. Atrocities against the Hindu minority community in Bangladesh are increasing by the day. As we all know, reports are coming on a daily basis. The recent case being of this young Hindu boy who was thrashed in a police station by a mob, and he was killed, and that those videos have, of course, gone viral. And it's a matter of time before all these various factions turn on each other, which is already happening. The students are very unhappy, displeased. They are threatening action against the Muhammad Yunus government, and it's a matter of time before the BNP, the Jamaat, and all these other radicals, they turn on each other. The country is in a state of implosion, as I would call it, and therefore, what really Muhammad Yunus, the wily, shrewd man that he is, he knows he's not. He cannot control all this. He knows he cannot control the narrative, and therefore he is making the singular demand. And this demand is coming constantly, again and again. Every 2 or 3 days later, this demand is coming. Give back Sheikh Hasina to us. The demand is coming because they want to use this as a cover. They want to use this as an excuse to cover up the failures of their own country, the implosion which is happening within Bangladesh. And therefore, it is very convenient for this common enemy, call it, if you will, that give back Sheikh Hasina to us. We want to put her on trial, which literally means in very medieval term, they really want to execute her. That's what they are really looking to do, and make a public spectacle out of the entire thing. And therefore, India, I think, has to stand very, very firm on this particular demand. And the other factor which we have to take into cognizance in this entire brew, which is building up day by day, is the role of both the Western governments and the Western media. Pointless now saying that it was this country or that country which was involved in the coup d'etat which overthrew Sheikh Hasina. That has already happened. But the fact is, what is complicating matters is that the Western media has put on these rose-tinted glasses and is viewing the entire development in Bangladesh through that particular color, which tinge with this romanticism that somehow democratic rights have been restored in Bangladesh. That's the narrative. I was recently watching a report on CNN, and I was so shocked that one of those leading correspondents of CNN, and she was reporting that people are overjoyed, there is happiness on the streets, that democracy, some kind of democracy has been restored. There is no sign of any elections. Nobody has been elected in any which manner. Muhammad Yunus is an unelected. If you ask me, he actually is a usurper who has been flown in literally to take over a government which has been overthrown in a military coup. The Western media is not even talking of the atrocities against the Hindus. They don't even acknowledge it. Forget about even casually mentioning about it. And therefore, what I'm arguing in my podcast is that please allow more and more of the Western media to go to Bangladesh. Let them freely cover Bangladesh. And it's a matter of time, trust me, what is the situation in Bangladesh is all these Islamists, all these Al Qaeda elements now having been released from prison, roaming inside Bangladesh. It's a matter of time, and if the Western media is covering it in this manner, that a Daniel Pearl-like incident again happens. And viewers will remember that Daniel Pearl was, of course, he was a Jew. He was kidnapped in Pakistan just because he was a Jew, and he was executed. And it's a matter of time where something like that happens, and probably a lot of the media might just come to their senses and understand what really is happening in Bangladesh, deep inside Bangladesh at this moment. But till that time, India has to, of course, play a very important role. It has to as it were, put up a wall against these demands. They have to shrug off these demands, not even acknowledge these demands. There are a lot of other things which India needs to do, which I'm going to talk about, of course, in this section of the podcast. But just to sum it up, right now, there is a bit of a threat which is looming for us. This demand is actually a cover. This demand is actually an excuse to cover up the failures of, it is to whitewash literally the deeds, the actions, and the consequences of what has happened when Sheikh Hasina was overthrown. Nobody can control the narrative right now in Bangladesh, not even probably the military. And therefore, all sides have actually, in one sense, agreed on this one common demand. They have ganged up that Sheikh Hasina should somehow be extradited to take the world's attention away from the real failures of the Bangladesh situation, of the cauldron which is simmering, of the minorities, especially the Hindu minority, which is being persecuted in Bangladesh. This is a sham, a cover-up to take attention completely away from this reality. So if we understand this reality, then what are India's options, what we should be doing? That is really the first thing we need to understand out there. And I think the first important thing that the government of India really needs to do is not by any means give legitimacy to the regime or the interim government in Dhaka. I think that is very important. We should actually not have too much of a communication with this Muhammad Yunus. The only communication which, if it is required, should be functional, that don't try and threaten India. Don't try and threaten, or don't try and put strictures and crush the minority Hindu community in Bangladesh. Those should be our two prerogatives. Those should be our two concerns only. Any other talk of relationship with Bangladesh actually, frankly, has gone completely out of the window. That is something which we will think about maybe much, much later. That's not going to happen immediately. But these are the two things we have to keep hammering our own narrative back to Bangladesh. This entire thing of Sheikh Hasina, if somebody even asks us, we have to refuse, not politely, but strongly, I would say, by saying that she's a friend. Because, as I said before, it's a test of not only our word, our commitment, our standing in world affairs, our standing in the global south. It is a test of our word, that can we stick to our words? Does India have the strength to stand by its friends? That is our test. It is something very, very similar to the situation when the Shah of Iran was deposed by students in Iran when the Iranian Revolution took place and the mullahs took over in Iran. Yes, America stood by the Shah of Iran. It did pay a price for it in the sense that it lost Iran completely after that, and things have never stabilized. But the world respected America, whether we like it or not. That is also the reality. They respected the fact that America had stood by its friends then, especially at that point in time. I think the Shah of Iran later died of cancer and all that in America. But it is a similar situation where we have to stand by Sheikh Hasina in our hour of need and against these demands. Number two, and this is the more important geostrategic reason we should be standing by Sheikh Hasina, we also have to support Sheikh Hasina because we have to see how circumstances roll out in Bangladesh, what kind of narrative develops not only in the present but in the future, because there is a remote possibility, though not a very likely possibility, that the people will start coming to their senses. They will probably realize that the country, the economy, the social fabric of Bangladesh was much, much better during Sheikh Hasina's tenure. And therefore, there might again be a demand, there might again be a yearning for Sheikh Hasina to come back. And that is what mature governments, that is what strong governments do, that political leaders in exile, actually we give sanctuary to them. And when the time is right, we allow them to go back and take over the reins of government in a democratic setup, of course. And that is what Sheikh Hasina will be of benefit to both sides, actually, if you ask me, both India and Bangladesh, when the time is right. As I said, it's a very remote possibility, doesn't seem like a very likely possibility at the moment, but you never know, strange thing happens. And that is why Sheikh Hasina also, besides being a friend, is also an asset which we have to protect, which we have to shield from harm. When the time is right, she can be, as I say, catapulted back into Bangladesh to take over the reins of the government. That is the time when we would, of course, need Sheikh Hasina. And that's the other reason why Sheikh Hasina should also not be touched. She should be allowed to stay in India. And then there was a mistake. Let me talk of a larger geostrategic issue. In 1971, when literally everything was in our hands when we created Bangladesh. And one of the biggest mistakes we committed, even though we liberated Bangladesh, we cut off Bangladesh from Pakistan. That, of course, is history now. But the mistake we did at that time was that we had an opportunity then, we had the chance then to create a Hindu enclave in Bangladesh itself, or kind of a separate country, autonomous zone, or whatever you want to call it. We had the chance to do that, it will never happen. But maybe if the radicalization of Bangladesh continues, goes on, and all these problems go on deepening, then maybe the time really would come when the government should start thinking in terms of supporting the Hindu Mukti Bahini version. Mukti Bahini, of course, was the resistant force which Sheikh Mujibur Rahman had created around the time of the Bangladesh crisis, in the 70s, when the war with Pakistan took place. So a Hindu equivalent of that, supply arms maybe and ammunition. Who knows? I mean, these are possibilities. Governments which are big power governments think on these lines. Maybe the time for that would come later. But again, that is an option we need to keep for that ourselves. And therefore, what we really need to be doing, I think, is that we need to let Bangladesh stew in its own juices. Let the viviparous tendencies, the splittist tendencies, the cleavage tendencies of these forces within Bangladesh, let them cut, slice, divide themselves as much as they want. It's really up to them. What we need to do is to cover ourselves. Our job is to protect ourselves, and that is why the speeding up of the boundary wall, the fencing is a paramount thing. And along with that comes the most important thing, that we have to secure our borders, especially in the northeast, in Bangladesh, because all these problems are interconnected. And therefore, what's really going on in Manipur, which again demands actually a full podcast by itself, which I might be doing a little later. But in short, what I want to say about Manipur then is, because vis-a-vis Bangladesh, all the trouble can spill over to all these parts, to Assam, to Manipur, Mizoram, all the areas of northeast, if you ask me. But in the immediate run, we need to do something about Manipur. The biggest problem, of course, as we know, are the kooky militants, the bases, the drug fields, the drug factories, the drug processing factories, all of which are sprung up. It's a multi-billion dollar kind of business which is going on in the mountains of Manipur. So literally, if somebody is thinking of policy, then the policy of actually using helicopter gunships to strafe these mountains with these enemy forces to stop the daily rocket attacks which are taking place from these mountains by the kooky militants who are hell-bent upon creating some kind of a kooky state. And number two, there is also now reports which are emerging that many of these kooky militants identify themselves, they think of themselves as the lost tribe from Israel. And if there is a possibility, we have to explore that possibility that Israel has leverage with these militant groups, then we have to talk to Israel, maybe forcefully also, about this problem so that they can use their good offices to stem the tide of this militant violence. But that is again a separate issue altogether, though it is interconnected with the Bangladesh crisis. I'll talk of that maybe a little later in another podcast. But we have to secure the lines in Manipur. We have to stop this threat. And therefore, what I'm really saying is that in a larger context, we have to build a firewall, the entire Northeast against the Bangladesh spillover. We have to protect ourselves from that spillover. We also have to see that the unrest doesn't affect Bengal. That's very, very important. And a policy, therefore, of shrugging off these absolutely crazy demands from Bangladesh, which is very, very clear now that they are trying to use a diversion. They are trying to take away the attention from the huge and endemic problems which Bangladesh is facing. Least of all the fact that the textile industry is now completely collapsed. In fact, the spillover is actually benefiting India. Reports are coming in that in Tirchur and other places in the south, they're benefiting. Large contracts are coming to India. Those textile contracts are going up. The economy is collapsing in Bangladesh. And therefore, we secure ourselves, we shrug off these demands. We, in fact, act really as the big power, the big brother in the region. We warn off, and if necessary, the BSF has to play a very, very important role in guarding the frontiers, stop any kind of waves of people who are coming in. That is extremely important. Maintain an iron vigil, as it were, on the border. All these things have to be done into mind, but the fact also is that we have to always keep in mind that these are really, really hardcore extremist elements which have been unleashed in Bangladesh. They are on par with some of the most dangerous extreme elements which are there in Pakistan right now. There could be a synergy between both countries, though I frankly don't see how too much of a cooperation with. I don't know how Pakistan is going to cooperate with Bangladesh, through which route are they going to come, and all that is going to happen. It's not going to be that simple to my mind. But the fact of the matter is these are highly radicalized, fundamentalist, religious fundamentalist forces which have been unleashed. Until things quieten down, as I said, things will get worse before they get better. We have to be prepared, and starting from the original point that the extradition of Sheikh Hasina is a no-no. It is a demand which cannot be met under any circumstances. And so, therefore, on this note, I come to the end of this podcast. I hope you really like this podcast. You like the show, do subscribe to it. And this note is goodbye and cheers from my end.